Hello guys. So I'm returning the fractions exam. I wanted to put together a quick explanation about each problem. Some people are having some issues. So when you're looking at your sheet and you see the feedback, what you got wrong, hopefully I put a little note about most of them what was going wrong. But please, listen to the audio here and ask me if you have any questions about what was different or if something still doesn't make sense. Our first problem here is a word problem. Misty's having a party, yada, yada, yada. At one table, 5 people, so you got 5 people, are sharing 3/4 of a pizza. 3/4. So on my scratch, I always like to write it down, just my big numbers, and then I'll manipulate those as I kind of figure it out. So what equal size portion of that pizza will each of the 5 people receive? So this isn't going to give you your answer, but I mean, you want to think about this and say, first of all, what's being split up? There's 5 people, there's 3/4 of a pizza. If it helps, you can kind of, make 3/4 here and say, all right, I have this, but I got to split this among 5 people. So if you're just going to say, it's a division problem, if I said you had $20 split among 5 people, just think about how you'd set that up. You'd say $20 split or divided among 5 people. So if it's 3/4 of a pizza split among 5, it's the same thing. You've got to put that thing being split up first, even if it's small, even if it looks weird. Like we're in fraction land now, so it's going to look weird. 3/4 of a pizza split among 5 people is how it should have been set up. Okay, so as you look at this, you say, man, I can't split this up into 5. It'd be what, 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5, but I have no idea what that is. You could potentially, I saw people trying this out, and good for you to try it out. It's not going to work when it's a small fraction, right? If I say 3/4 and I do a jump of 5, well, that automatically jumps me over here. And I think what's dangerous about this problem, and a lot of people thought, oh, well, if I need to try to model this, and you didn't. I told you guys you didn't need to. But you might put 5 here and then start jumping by 3/4, and just think about what might happen, okay, as you get closer and closer. And I don't know what it is, but you end up, I saw a lot of people get 6 something, right? So you get there and you're like, okay, so 6 something is my answer. But you've got to go back to the problem and ask yourself, does my answer make sense for what the problem asks me? What equal size portion of that pizza? 6? More? And then you're just trying to make stuff up. You say, oh, 6 slices or 6 this or that. No, it's not going to work out. The only way I could think of trying to make this model work is to say, all right, if I have 3/4, I have 3/4, and I'm not asking you to model this. This is kind of the key. If it's 3/4, can I split that into 5 pieces? Yeah, but I don't know what those are to make this. So the only thing I could do is maybe make this fraction bigger so that it's something that can be split into 5s. And my first thought, if I was going to do that, would be, well, times 5 on the top and bottom. If I did that, and again, this is not the answer. This is theory, right? So hopefully you're listening and you're really trying to understand what I'm thinking. But if I did this, I would get 15/20. And now I would say, all right, well, just looking at the numerator, can I split 15 up into 5 pieces? Yeah, I would get 3/20 in each one. Okay. But sometimes, guys, we want to know just how can we compute this. So coming back here, once you know this should be easy. Write it out, 3/4 divided by 5. And I want to put it over 1 so I can do fraction division. But again, I can't do this. 3 is not perfectly divisible into 5. And the method I want you to focus on mainly is the reciprocal method. You keep the first. So I'm going to rewrite the first one. I'm going to multiply by the reciprocal. So that means keeping the first number, multiply instead of divide. And what's the reciprocal of that? It's 1/5. When I do that across, it should be easy./I'll get 3 on the top and then 20 on the bottom. So that's how much each person should get. When I multiply that by 5 to fact check, I'm going to get 15/20, which is a complicated way of saying 3/4. Okay? So this method, if you like the common denominator thing, where you turn them both into the same thing, that'd work too. but either pick common denominator or multiplying by the reciprocal. I could say 3/4 divided by, and let me turn this into something with a 4 on the bottom. So 1 times 4 is 4. 5 times 4 is 20. And when I go across, I get just temporarily 3/20, right? I can't perfectly divide it yet, but that's going to be over. The trick was it's going to be over 1. So then I can get rid of that, and I get just 3/20 left over. Okay, so I think the biggest reason people were missing this question is they were putting 5 divided by 3/4, but it's not, 5 people being split up into 3/4. So you got to know what's being split up, and just trust yourself. Okay, and I'm using my answer key here because I don't have a blank copy right now, so that's kind of the official method there. Tina needs to create these invitations. The most common answer I found to this problem was 1/24, meaning, okay, that's my answer. In 3 hours, Tina is going to make 1/24 of an invitation. I mean, we talked about this in class. There's no way these guys are going to give you problems that end in like madness. Like, why would this, Tina, you really need to relook your strategy if you're only getting 1/24 done in 3 hours, right? When you get this kind of answer to a problem like that, where you're expecting 8 or 15 invitations, some real number, like that should be an alarm to you. So the reason people were getting this is because they were saying, well, 1/8 divided by 3. And, they did this method correctly. They would say, okay, 1/8 times 1/3. But again, that your clue should be that right there. So what really is happening, this person's got 3 hours, and each chunk of 1/8 of an hour is going to make an invitation. So what's being split up? It's actually the 3 hours into 1/8 hour blocks to make invitations. Once you have that, you should be thinking 3/1 divided by 1/8. Yeah, I could do the top, but I couldn't do the bottom. And I was doing my other thing with it where I have a fraction on top and bottom. I don't want to even show that anymore. Some of you would know there'd be 3 on the top and then 1/8 on the bottom. But let's just do it by the multiply by the reciprocal method for now. 3/1 times 8/1. And when I run that across, I'm going to get 24/1, which then simplifies to 24. Okay? Next, we've got Yasmin. And this one I specifically said, hey, we need to model. Okay, and everybody did try that for the most part. And read it. We say, what's being split up? Well, she has 2 2/3 pints, and she's going to give 1/3 each guest. So she's going to split that 2 2/3 up into as many thirds as she can. And so we've been doing this constantly. We'd make a number line, and we'd say, I would even write it out first too to say, so it's 2 2/3 divided into 1/3, or divided into 1/3 portions, I should say, sorry. And then I would even say, once you rewrite this, because we can't do this math, once you rewrite this, what improper fraction does that become? It becomes 8/3. And once you see this, 8/3 divided by 1/3, well, geez, your answer is right in front of you. 8 divided by 1 is 8. 3 divided by 3 is 1. Go slow with that. People are still putting 3 there. They're not thinking it through. And that's going to be 8, so 8 pints. But we're supposed to model this, so I'm going to take 8/3 and put it here. And we've said this a bunch too. Put the improper fraction here, because you're not going to know when you're going to get to 2 2/3. Because we also like to jump by improper fractions eventually, 3/3. Instead of saying 1 1/3, 1 2/3, it gets sloppy there, especially if it's not a unit fraction like this. 1/3 is easy to kind of jump by if you're doing mixed numbers, but we like this more. So 5/3, 6/3, 7/3, and then finally 8/3. The other big thing I saw people doing wrong here is they would get to this 8/3 and they'd say, okay, that's my answer. But you got to remember, where did this come from? And that seems suspicious to me. This is from the original problem. That's this. That doesn't tell me your answer. That tells me it's another way of saying where you ended. Well, how did you get there? How many thirds did you need? It's the jumps, guys. Count those. And sometimes it'll be that same numerator if you're just jumping by 1 on the top. So it can get confusing. But rewind, and when you put this back to 2 2/3, you should be fact checking with the question and saying, this doesn't make sense. But 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. 8 jumps does. So she can serve 8 guests. It's always key to kind of go back and say, well, what am I trying to answer here? How many guests can she serve? And now because it ended up here perfectly, if it like landed here or here and there was a little bit extra, I wouldn't be surprised if you saw that one day it ends early, right? You didn't have enough to feed everybody, or your last jump goes over. Then you would have excess. So this other problem, I didn't really grade it for our quiz. I kind of let everybody off the hook here. And most of you got it right, though. You said, no, there's not going to be any ice cream left over because it went in perfectly. So very nice work by everybody. And our last 3, we really just want to go with our computation methods. So kind of ignore what I've got there. The best thing you guys can do each time, especially if they present it like this on IXL or whatever, is rewrite it. Do many rewrites. 3 divided by 2/7. Those are different languages. I don't want to do those. So I'm going to rewrite it as 3 wholes, make them both fractions, divided by 2/7. Okay. And I'll show both methods this time, but the others I'm just going to say multiply by the reciprocal. Okay, that's the simplest, most straightforward way to do division with fractions. So the common denominator thing would be 7 here, because I'd look at those and I'd say, well, this is already at 7. If I just get this to 7, then I'll be able to find my answer. So I'll come off to the side and I'll say, so I need to turn 3 wholes into something over 7. How do I get to 7? Times 7. So do the same up here, and what do you get? 21. So now I have 21/7 divided by 2/7. And again, you have to be patient here. 21 divided by 2 is going to look weird at first, but it's going to be over 7 divided by 7, 1 whole. So now that can be gone because anything over 1 is just the original thing. So I have 21 over 2. And I told you guys I was going to start deducing points for answers as improper fractions. This needs to become the mixed number. It's more than 1. It's every 2 is another whole. So I could skip count by 2s until I get close to 21, right? 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 12, 14, 16, 18, 20. That's 10 fingers. If I do another one, I'm at 22, and that's not going to work. So it'll be 10 wholes with 1 left over, so that 1 left over is here. The math way to show that is 21 divided by 2. 2 goes into 2 once, because 2 times 1 is 2. Subtract it, 0. And another big mistake I saw people making is they say, oh, 2 can't go into 1, so I have 1 left over, and they just throw a half up there. But remember, you still have to go through these steps. This is important to put a value here. Can 2 go into 1? No. So I do 2 times 0, and I get 0. I subtract it, and I have just a 1 left over. Okay, that 1 comes up and is the numerator. That 2 that you divided by before is still there, so 10.5. Okay, that's a lot of steps. I mean, if you want to just do the reciprocal, like, come here, 3 wholes divided by 2/7, rewrite. You keep the first term, you change the sign to multiply, and you get the reciprocal, which is 7 over 2. That takes me to 21 halves again. And I already showed you up here how to turn that into 10.5. 7/9 divided by 4. Rewrite. Don't do it like that. Don't do it in a way that you might be wrong. People were writing it, or they were flipping the fractions. Like, the order matters with division. If you change the order of these things, you don't get the same answer. Okay, you get the wrong answer. 10 divided by 2 is not the same as 2 divided by 10. That's the one we need to remember. Okay, so I put this over 1. Can't do it. So I say to myself, all right, well, I'll multiply by the reciprocal. Keep the first term, multiply by the reciprocal. I'm going to get 7/36. And that's it. I can't reduce anymore. This is prime, and this has nothing to do with that prime. Okay, if this was 28, then it wouldn't matter if that was prime. I could divide them both by that prime, 7, but this is 36, so it's not divisible. So that should be your final answer for that problem. And my final one here, 3/4 divided by 2/5. My last point too is that these seem easier because they just give you the values, right? But the word problem really gives you background where you can cross-check your ideas. Like, how did I know 120? Here I wouldn't know if 1/24th was wrong, like above, right? Because I'm just going to say, well, it's a bunch of numbers and I got something, I don't know. The word problem gives you the clue, like, wait, I can't have 1/24th of an invitation. I must have done something wrong. Here, that doesn't exist. But they put it in order, and if you remember how to do it, these should be easier. Keep the first, change to multiplying, and then reciprocal. Multiply by the reciprocal. Multiply by the reciprocal. Do the top, 15, do the bottom, 8. A lot of you lost a couple points for this. Not many, 2. I don't want to cross you for it, but it's also, we need to be as precise as we can. And this can be reduced. It's obviously more than one whole. 8/8 would be a whole. So I would say, all right, 15 divided by 8, because that's what that line means is division. 8 can go into 1 no times. 8 goes into 15 once. Because 8 times 1 is 8. If I did 2, it'd be 16. That'd be too many. Slide that up so you can see. I subtract 15. 15 minus 8, I have 7 left. There's nothing else here. I'm doing fractional remainder, so I'm done. Bring you up. You're the numerator. And you're still being divided by that. So it should be 1 and 7/8. All right, so if any of those problems still don't make sense to you, link up with me and I'll explain it to you more in class. Okay, thanks.